I knew I was about to commit an unforgivable sin. I had asked for a promotion, not during some heated meeting, not with banners or a whispered rebellion behind the coffee machine. I simply booked a one on one with Melissa, our HR director, to discuss the most reasonable thing a loyal 6 year employee could do. I came prepared like I was meeting a Nobel Review Board with data, reports, thank you emails from federal clients, and a detailed 90-day action plan for the managerial role. I even checked every slide for typos, just in case Melissa's formatting OCD kicked in again. The meeting took place on the 16th floor, in that bright glass room where you could see Seattle yawning beyond the windows. I sat there with a cup of lukewarm mint tea, back straight, voice steady. Melissa looked different. She leaned on the edge of her chair like she might slide off, twirling a Mont Blanc pen I suspected was a farewell gift from some ex-executive. I appreciate your effort, Naomi, she said in that syrupy tone of expired honey. But the company is currently going through a cultural transition. Ah, culture. The word they polish up whenever they're about to justify something mediocre. When they can't discredit your skill, they cloak themselves in culture. I smiled. Not the cheerful kind, the kind you give after hearing the same rejection enough times to build your own dictionary of corporate idioms. Melissa went on. We need people who can adapt, not just technically, but in spirit. Collaborative, flexible, team oriented. There it was again. Team spirit. I nodded. I suppose handling a classified DARPA contract solo for 8 straight months without leaking a single byte of data counts as collaboration, in a way. She blinked. Just once, but long enough for me to know I'd hit a nerve. I'll think about it, Melissa said, closing her notebook like she was sealing a coffin for my promotion hopes. I stood, still smiling. I look forward to your response. After all, that's part of our positive feedback culture, isn't it? I left the meeting room, walking through the polished wooden hallway that everyone called the scent of freshly waxed power. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Joel Brennan, VP of Engineering, watching me from the coffee station. Joel was the kind of man who only sat comfortably once his nameplate was engraved. We'd gone to Stanford together. Back then, I was top of our data science cohort. Joel's most memorable moment? Spilling espresso all over the whiteboard while presenting his AI thesis. Now they call him a visionary. I passed him. He nodded, the kind of nod that says he's seen your brilliance but still prefers you under a lower ceiling. That afternoon, an email landed in my inbox. No subject line, no greeting. Just one cold sentence. Special meeting, HR department. Report at 4 o'clock p.m., room 9C. No exclamation mark. No, thank you for your continued contribution. I knew. The way only a woman who's been accidentally left off promotion paperwork 3 years in a row can know. This wasn't a meeting, it was an execution. I stood up and straightened my blazer. I didn't feel angry, just cold. The kind of cold that comes when an air vent blows straight through your self-respect. And if your chest tightens a little hearing this, maybe it's because you've had your own surprise meeting. If so, you're not alone. Where are you listening from? A warm couch at home? Your quiet office? Or stuck in traffic, wishing someone would finally get justice for once? Tell me in the comments, because these workplace stories, no matter the state or the industry, always sound strangely familiar. And if you enjoy smart revenge, the kind that doesn't need shouting or slamming doors, just a perfectly timed lift of the chin, hit subscribe. What comes next? Trust me, it's worth staying for, coffee freshly brewed and all. 400 p.m. Room 9C. Ground floor, right next to the janitor's lounge. A small but fitting detail. They never fire you in a room with windows. The lights were that pale fluorescent kind, the kind that makes even Faith look tired. Melissa was already seated. Next to her sat Joel Brennan, laptop open like a shield. At the end of the table was someone I'd never met before, an in-house legal officer with young round glasses holding a folder thick enough to serve as evidence. Melissa started, her voice smooth as cold oil. Naomi, thank you for coming. We just wanted to talk a little about your personal direction within the company. Personal direction. HR's favorite phrase is when they're about to bury your career under polite language. I sat down carefully, placing my tea far enough away so that if she knocked it over, it wouldn't stain my blouse. We value your capability, Melissa continued, but over the past few months, we've received feedback that you've been difficult to work with. Difficult? I repeated evenly. With whom? With management, Joel said, eyes glued to the screen. We need teamwork, especially for projects like DARPA. There it was, the DARPA contract. $50 million, every security protocol tied to my digital signature. I knew Melissa was tugging at a thread she didn't understand. I leaned back, nodding slightly. Teamwork, yes. I remember being the only one working through New Year's weekend to deliver the first encryption module. I just don't recall anyone from the team being there when the system nearly collapsed because of the authentication failure. Joel pressed his lips together, forcing a thin smile. Naomi, this isn't a technical issue. Oh, I know, I said slowly, my eyes turning to Melissa. This is a cultural one, isn't it? Melissa's smile was so thin it was nearly transparent. I think we all know harmony is more important than raw productivity. Silence. The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioner sigh. Finally, the legal officer spoke. According to company policy, we reserve the right to terminate employment if an employee no longer aligns with our development direction. She pushed a yellow envelope toward me. Inside was the termination letter, effective immediately. Melissa looked at me, waiting. She wanted to see me panic, plead, explode, anything that would make her feel powerful. I just smiled. Interesting, I said. Because under Clause 8.4 of the federal contract we hold, any personnel change involving a Level 3 access holder, like me, must be reported to DARPA within 24 hours. The three of them exchanged glances. Otherwise, I continued, their security system automatically severs all connections and locks every access key. It's a chain reaction. I'm sure you've read that part, haven't you? Joel swallowed hard. Melissa forced a laugh. Oh, our tech department handles that. Right, I said, standing up and picking up my tea. But that department still needs my authentication key to reboot the system. No one spoke. I left the room in silence. No applause, no sympathetic glances, just the sound of my heels against the long hallway floor, ticking like a countdown to something they hadn't realized yet. When I reached my desk, Mark from IT stopped by. He lowered his voice. Naomi, I heard what happened. Just stay calm, okay? I shouldn't say this, but you know who's really at fault. I smiled. Thanks, Mark. I'm perfectly calm. I was just thinking, if they fired the only person who knows how to keep the DARPA contract running, maybe I should set a timer to see how long before they call me back. He laughed, though worry lingered in his eyes. I packed a few small things. My white ceramic mug that said, "Trust but verify," a photo of my sister and me at the Grand Canyon, and a small silver USB drive, something only I knew the contents of. I left the building as the Seattle sun dipped low, painting faint orange streaks across the parking lot windows. No one came to see me off. No goodbye. Just the wind flipping the corner of my termination letter, whispering like it was mocking me. Looks like you're officially free, Naomi. I slipped the paper into my bag and smiled. Not really, I whispered to myself. They just signed their own self-destruct clause. I don't remember how long I drove. That afternoon, Seattle was wrapped in fog as if the whole city was trying to hide me from myself. My phone buzzed softly on the passenger seat. 3 messages, all from coworkers, each with the same 3 words. I'm so sorry. I smiled. Funny how people only remember you when they're afraid they'll end up like you. I pulled over by a small cafe on Lake Union, an old place where I used to work late, sipping cold lattes over piles of classified reports. I ordered a cappuccino, reached into my coat pocket, and pulled out the silver USB drive. Not a habit of taking data outside the office, just a habit of not trusting Meridian's IT department, especially with Joel running it. I plugged the USB into my laptop and opened the folder named Shadow Backup. Over 40 files, neatly sorted by date. every DARPA data packet I had processed. Each file carried a digital certificate, and buried deep within the internal system was an auxiliary verification chain only I knew about: a living lock. If I were ever deleted from the system, the entire network would automatically sever itself from the federal servers, a safety feature I had built long ago because I knew what happens when people trust leadership too much. When I left the cafe, the rain had started, the kind of soft, steady drizzle that doesn't soak your coat but blurs everything, as if the world were seen through frosted glass. I don't know why, but when my car turned onto the boulevard, I started laughing, not out of triumph, but because everything had unfolded exactly as I predicted: precise, efficient, and stupid. The next morning, I woke up late. No alarms, no meetings, no Slack pings, just a quiet kitchen and the smell of real coffee. I was stirring my cup when the phone rang, an internal Meridian number. I didn't pick up right away. I let it ring long enough to imagine the chaos on the other side. Servers locked out, DARPA reports failing authentication, and the word system authorization failure blinked on Joel's screen. I finally answered. Naomi? Melissa's voice, shakier than usual, though still clinging to authority. Good morning, Melissa. So early? I thought HR didn't start until 9. We're experiencing a minor issue, she said. Some of the DARPA files won't open. Maybe you accidentally locked access? No, I said softly. I didn't do anything accidentally. A long pause, then a sigh. Naomi, this contract is critical. We just need you to come in for a bit, help the tech team troubleshoot. Nothing personal. Personal. There it was again, the word people use right before they try to use you one more time. Melissa, I said slowly, I'm no longer an employee of Meridian, and under federal security law, I'm not authorized to access their systems. I understand, but DARPA is good, I interrupted, because if they're in touch, they'll know exactly who violated protocol by changing personnel without notifying them. Within 24 hours, a sharp inhale. Naomi, are you threatening the company? I laughed. No, I'm just reminding you of the law you personally signed compliance for. I hung up and sat there for a while. No rush of victory, no gloating, just the calm of someone watching a train derail exactly where she warned it would. I opened my laptop. My inbox was already filling up. DARPA security audit, urgent response required. System access breach reported. Unverified clearance holder removed from registry. 3 emails. The first tremors before the DSS storm. By afternoon, an internal memo leaked. Meridian Dynamics has been temporarily suspended from the DARPA program pending a data integrity review. I read it quietly, set my cup down, and murmured, Well then, good afternoon, Seattle. That evening, another email arrived from someone I didn't expect. Joel Brennan. Subject: We need to talk. He wrote short, no excuses. Naomi, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just following orders. Maybe we can still fix this. I reread the line, I was just following orders, several times. It's the oldest line in every workplace tragedy. A polite way of saying, I didn't have courage, but I had justification. I didn't reply. I dragged the email into a folder labeled Collateral Damage, the graveyard of systems I once believed in. The next morning, the tech press broke the story. Meridian Dynamics faces a federal security investigation over a personnel protocol breach. The photo showed the Meridian headquarters under a gray sky with a small caption beneath it. A key employee was reportedly terminated without federal notice. I chuckled. Not loud, just enough to shake the foam on my coffee. That night, my phone rang again. Unknown number. The voice on the line was deep, calm, and without hesitation. Naomi West? Yes. This is the Defense Security Agency. We need to meet. It's about Meridian. I looked out the window, city lights rippling across the lake. All right, I said, I've got time. They showed up at 6:12 in the morning, right when I'd just dropped the bread into the toaster and hadn't finished steeping the tea. No sirens. No black car parked out front. No pounding on the door like in some action movie. Just a polite knock, the kind that tricks you into thinking you're still in control. I opened the door. 2 people stood there in gray suits. A tall man with neatly silvered hair, holding a thin leather folder. Beside him, a woman with her hair in a tight bun and eyes sharp as fluorescent light in a 3 a.m. emergency meeting. Naomi West? Yes, I'm Agent Park. This is Agent Salinas. We're with the Defense Security Agency. I tilted my head. I only have one chair. If one of you doesn't mind sitting on the apple crate, please. We sat in the kitchen, surrounded by the faint smell of burnt toast and sunlight filtering through the curtains. They didn't bother with small talk. Meridian's system has been deemed non-compliant with federal security standards following your termination. Not surprised, I said, pouring the tea. You're the one who integrated the final encryption layer into the data structure, correct? I nodded. And the one who designed the self-destruct protocol if personnel changes weren't reported. Salinas's mouth twitched, almost a smile. We can confirm that. All access has been denied, and there are signs of forged personnel logs. I said nothing, just slid the teacup toward them. Park opened the folder. It was clearly a capability file. We'd like you to assist in recovering data during the investigation. As a technical consultant. I paused. Consultant, not Meridian employee? No, he said. They're no longer a preferred contractor. A sentence as soft as air, but anyone who's ever worked with the government knows. It's a death warrant for a company. 3 hours later, I was at the regional DSS building. No windows, just a large screen filled with rolling command lines. Joel sat at the far end of the table, looking like a man forced to watch a replay of his own mistakes. When I walked in, he looked up, then immediately looked down. Naomi. I cut him off. I'm not here for apologies. Salinas handed me a temporary access login. I entered the analysis system and typed a few diagnostic commands. All files related to Phase 3 of the project were moved out of sequence. No valid authentication strings. Joel, would you like to explain that? He swallowed hard. I just followed management's orders. Melissa said, I asked you, not Melissa. He lowered his head. No answer. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. When I stepped out, Brian Denning, the CEO of Meridian, was waiting in the hall. His suit was wrinkled, his tie hanging loose, like power trying to cling to a man who'd already lost it. Naomi, I'm sorry for everything. Things got out of hand. I tilted my head, studying him like a plaster statue starting to crack. Really? I never wanted you fired. It was a mistake. No, it was stupidity. Don't confuse the two. He exhaled shakily. We're willing to reinstate your contract. Higher salary, full benefits. I laughed. Brian, my seat was built from skill and principle. You kicked it out from under me because I didn't fit the dress code of compliance. And now you want to rebuild it with a raise? Selena stepped forward. DARPA has confirmed Meridian is officially removed from the contractor list. The project is being reassigned to a new firm. Naomi will serve as the technical liaison during the transition. Brian staggered back, as if someone had just driven a fist into his chest. Joel stared blankly at the screen. Melissa wasn't there, probably busy calling her lawyer. On the way home, I didn't feel joy, just peace. The kind that comes when you're the last to leave a party built on pretense, shoes in hand, and the quiet certainty that you'll never come back. I thought that they'd go quiet, that after the DSS Thunderbolt, they'd scatter like cigarette smoke after a lunch break. But no, they didn't go quiet. They screamed in silence, the kind of slow, leaking desperation that sounds like a broken faucet in the employee lounge. The first email arrived at 6:42 the next morning. Subject line, checking in, from Joel. No greeting, no exclamation marks, just a few clipped lines. Naomi, I know things are awkward right now. I just want you to know I've always respected you and appreciated your contribution to the project. If there's anything I can do to support you during this transition, please don't hesitate. Support? He called, pushing me out of the very system I built. Support? I marked the email as read. Didn't reply. An hour later came Melissa's turn. Her email read like a UN humanitarian application. She talked about systemic pressure, internal miscommunication, and deep regret. At the end, one line almost made me choke on my coffee. I hope someday we can sit down together, two strong women, and share how we overcame adversity. Sit down together? We already did, right when she read my termination letter with the smile of someone who just won Broadway tickets. But the emails weren't the end. I saw them again, in person, at the new DSS building, where the project had been relocated. I was waiting for the elevator, laptop, and new clearance badge in hand when Joel appeared. Out of nowhere, walking fast, like a man who'd taken the wrong floor and was hoping to save his career with a single greeting. Naomi, he said, forcing a smile. Congrats on the, uh, new role. I looked him straight in the eye. Joel, I still haven't deleted the recording from the day I asked for that promotion. The color drained from his face. I stepped into the elevator. No more words. The doors closed, and I could see him standing there, trapped in his own loop of bad decisions. A week later, DSS requested my presence for an internal hearing, not as a suspect, but to clarify the technical breaches Meridian had caused. Brian, the CEO, was there too. Not at the head of the table this time. He sat on the edge, hands clasped, his expensive suit looking as out of place as a silk napkin at a funeral. I just want to cooperate, he said when I entered. I nodded. Then start by sitting still and not interrupting. In that windowless room, I laid it all out, from Melissa's unauthorized approvals to Joel's tampering with system logs to shift blame onto junior staff. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Just the facts, cold, time-stamped, backed up, and undeniable under LED light. Agent Salinas ended the meeting with one sentence that froze the room. If not for Naomi, we'd be dealing with a classified data breach. And none of you would be sitting here. You'd be sitting in court. Then came the former colleagues. They tried to reach out on LinkedIn, on private, Slack, and even sent flowers to the DSS office with ridiculous notes like, "You were always the light in the compliance hallway." Light? I was the one turning the lights off every night while they were gone by 4:30. I wasn't angry. I didn't forgive them either. I just remembered every glance, every smug smile, every friendly check-in as I cleared my desk. And now, watching them tremble, clinging to the shards of their broken reputation, I felt only one thing: justice. No violence, no blood for revenge. Just the truth, finally free. And the sight of those who once sat high, slipping quietly into the pit they dug for themselves. None of them thought I'd be the one sitting back at the table. In Brian's head, in Melissa's, in Joel's, and in the minds of every suit who once called me the quiet compliance girl. I was supposed to disappear once DSS finished its sweep. But that Wednesday, I walked into the new project headquarters on the 23rd floor. Not as a guest, not as a former employee, but as the only person with full technical authority to rebuild the entire security system from the ground up. One phone call from Agent Salinas had sealed it. Naomi, this isn't a proposal. It's an invitation. The project continues, but we need someone who doesn't follow orders, someone who follows standards. And according to every file we've reviewed, there's only one person qualified. I laughed, not out of pride, but out of irony. They had pushed me out. Then their own system demanded I come back. The internal briefing took place at 10 in the morning. I walked into the conference room wearing a new silver badge engraved directly into the metal. Technical Operations Oversight, Clearance Omega Tier. Melissa sat in the back row. She gave me a slight nod, the kind of nod people give when their minds are hosting 3 simultaneous crisis meetings titled, "How did life spin this fast?" Joel wasn't there. Word was, he was on temporary leave for mental recovery. And Brian? He sat stiffly at the head of the table, a dethroned king pretending his crown hadn't already rolled under the nearest chair. I didn't bring a PowerPoint. No animated text, no soundtrack, no thank you for being here. I just picked up a black marker and drew on the whiteboard, the new architecture for contract encryption control. Every line I drew, every node I circled, was a security gate only I, or those I authorized, could open. From now on, I said without looking up, every audit log will be triple encrypted. Any unauthorized access will auto-lock in 0.7 seconds and alert the DSS office in Arlington. If anyone's wondering who holds final authority, the answer is DSS. If you're wondering who built the system, me. The meeting ended in silence. No applause, no hollow compliments, just eyes, and the kind of quiet that falls when people realize they're no longer the center of gravity. Out in the hallway, I heard heels behind me. Naomi, wait, Brian's voice. I turned. He looked like a man trying to meditate through panic. I just wanted to say, I hope we can start over, together. I smiled, gently, the way HR manuals call a brand safe smile. I'm not starting over. I'm continuing. You're the one trying to catch up. The next day, I met with DSS's new partner, Cytera, a smaller tech contractor. No drama, no HR scandals, just clean code and clean records. The lead engineer was a woman named Carla, mid-40s, short hair, precise speech, like a laser measure in human form. I've heard about you from DSS, she said with a faint smile. They call you the only person who kept the system from going to hell. I shrugged. I just do what's necessary. Nothing more, nothing less. Carla tilted her head. Then you should know. They're considering you for a special advisory program at headquarters, highest clearance level. They only invite people who've already proven they can walk through fire. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded. Because I knew the point wasn't being brought back. It was being asked to go further. And so here I am, the same woman once invited to resign in a conference room that smelled of cheap vanilla perfume, now writing the new security protocols for every Tier 1 contractor in the chain. Not for promotion, not for money, but for one simple reason. I'm the only one who knew how not to break it in the first place. 3 weeks later, my new system went live. No Meridian logos on the control panels. No more Brian approved on the procedure docs. Just a small, italic line at the bottom of the interface. Protocol W, version 1.0. W doesn't officially stand for West, not publicly anyway. It stands for watchdog. Because after everything I'd seen, someone needed to watch the people who think authority comes from a title. On the first day, I arrived at the DSS office early. The place felt nothing like Meridian. No team building posters plastered around, no empty slogans about a culture of excellence, only the low hum of servers and the smell of freshly roasted coffee. Salinas walked past my desk with an espresso in hand and asked, "How did you get the Cytera IT team to run so smoothly? They have a reputation for being difficult." I smiled. I didn't make them cooperate. I just made them believe that if they messed up, the system would make them ashamed. She chuckled. "You're dangerous, West." "No," I replied. "I just learned how to survive in a place that praised the person who caused the problem and punished the one who fixed it." I opened the dashboard to check the feeds. Everything looked perfect. No gaps, no unauthorized access. But in the lower corner of the screen, a notification blinked. Unauthorized attempt detected. Meridian Dynamics.net, 0542 AM. I zoomed into the log. No mistake. The IP originated from their old office. The person trying to break in was Joel. I didn't feel anger. I tilted my head, lifted my coffee, and took a sip. He still hadn't learned the lesson, I whispered. I recorded the note and sent the report to DSS. No need for commentary. An hour later, I saw the system message. Subject JB. Clearance permanently revoked. I didn't laugh. I just felt closure. That afternoon, I was called into a meeting with Carla, Salinas, and a man I'd not met before, a DARPA representative. Middle-aged, deep voice, few words, each one heavy like an iron anchor. "We reviewed your reports, West," he said. "You didn't just save the data, you prevented a federal cascade failure." I nodded. "I did my job," I said. "No," he corrected. "You did the work 3 other departments were afraid to do. You didn't just save the project, you saved the process." There was a pause, then he continued. "DARPA is forming a zero-breach team, an independent security advisory group reporting directly to headquarters. We want you to lead it." I didn't answer right away. The offer made my chest both tighten and loosen. I remembered long nights at Meridian, alone in the dark office, the printer whining, doing work no one knew or cared about until everything fell apart. Now they knew my name. But I didn't need them to know. I needed them to understand. "I'll think about it," I said. Salinas smiled. "Think quickly. People like you shouldn't be asked to sit in the back." I left the meeting as rain began. Seattle rain has its own sound. Not loud, not drenching, just a humid haze. That reminds you the past still hangs overhead. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know you won, it read, but Meridian isn't finished yet. Melissa. She still hadn't learned the game was over. I folded the phone away and slipped it into my coat. If she wanted to keep playing, she could play alone, in a board no one watched anymore. That night, I came home to my small apartment overlooking the lake. The smell of rain mixed with mint tea. I opened my laptop and signed into the system. The screen read, "Access granted, welcome back, West." Beneath it, I typed one more line of code. No one gets fired for asking to lead, but some get destroyed for underestimating who can. I saved the file, leaned back, and closed my eyes. Not to rest, but to feel the rare quiet of justice installed without a single shot fired. I used to think justice would be loud applause, fireworks, and a headline on the front page of the New York Times. But it wasn't. When real justice arrives, it comes like wind quiet, cold, and without asking permission. On a calm Monday morning, I got an email from Carla. Subject line: Transition complete. Only 2 sentences inside. Meridian has been officially removed from the federal contractor list. DSS recommends Naomi West for National Strategic Technical Advisor. I read it twice, then a third time, not with excitement, just an exhale, because the real victory isn't getting promoted. It's watching the people who once laughed over your shoulder bow their heads to sign their resignation papers. 3 days later, DSS held the formal announcement, a large conference room. No logos, no flowers, just white light shining on a small podium. I stood beside Carla and Agent Salinas. In the back row, a few familiar faces. Joel, back again, but without an access badge. Melissa, sitting next to her attorney, eyes down, nails scraping the edge of her notebook, like she was clinging to the last fragment of her reputation. The director of the Defense Security Agency was the first to speak. He read slowly. During the investigation, Ms. Naomi West identified and prevented a sequence of breaches that could have compromised national security. She didn't just protect the data, she protected her principles, even when it cost her job. The room went still. No coughs, no mouse clicks. Then he looked at me. Ms. West, would you like to say a few words? I stepped forward. No notes, no script, just my voice, steady and low. They say when one door closes, another one opens. But no one mentions that sometimes you have to break the lock yourself. A few quiet laughs. Carla nodded. I looked toward the back row. Melissa didn't look up. Joel's hands were clasped, his head down. I didn't need their eyes. I only needed their silence. After the meeting, Salinas caught up to me in the hallway. Are you ready for the next step? You mean the Zero Breach project? I asked. Not just that, she said, her eyes glinting. We want you to lead the entire program, not just the technical work. You'd oversee contract ethics and personnel compliance. Think of it as a cultural rebuild. I laughed softly. So basically, I'll be teaching them how not to stab their coworkers in the back? If that's what it takes, she said, smiling. I looked out the glass wall. Rain was falling again in Seattle, the kind that slides down the window like a memory refusing to leave. In the reflection, I saw myself in a silver gray suit, not the quiet compliance girl anymore, but the woman who held the system in her hands and stayed calm enough to rebuild it. That evening, after everyone left, I stayed alone in the office. Outside, the yellow city lights glowed against the desk. I opened my laptop. One unread message waited. From Brian Denning. Naomi, I know apologies mean little now, but if I could say one last thing, it's thank you. For doing what I couldn't. For keeping the company from collapsing in the worst possible way. I've lost a lot. But maybe the one thing I finally learned is this. I once had someone better than me right in front of me, and I never saw it. I finished reading and sat still for a while. No anger, no pity, just lightness. The kind that comes when you finally set down the stone you've been carrying for years. I didn't reply. Some things are best answered with silence. That night, I stopped by the same cafe by the lake. the one where I'd sat the day I was fired. Same table, same view of rain streaking down the window. But I was different. No longer is the woman dismissed from a job, the woman invited back to redefine what a job means. The barista smiled as she brought the coffee. Long time no see. Same order? I nodded. Yes. But add a little cinnamon. I like it stronger now. When I left, I looked toward downtown, high-rise lights reflecting off the water, flickering like endless strings of code. Maybe I'll take Salinas' offer. Maybe I'll build a new team, one where women don't have to ask to lead, they're trusted to. And maybe someday I'll rewrite that handbook Melissa once used to keep others small. Except mine will start with one line: no one gets fired for knowing their own worth. 3 months later, I got an invitation to Washington, D.C. The flight left at 7:15 in the morning, clear skies, window seat. As Seattle shrank beneath the clouds, I looked down at the city I'd once left with a box of belongings and a heart full of bruises. Now I was coming back, not to demand justice, but to redefine it. The new DSS headquarters wasn't what I expected. No armed guards, no metal detectors beeping. Everything was quiet, minimal, precise. They didn't need to intimidate anyone. Anyone who walked through those doors already understood this was not a place that joked. I was led to a meeting room on the 9th floor. A small sign on the door read, Division 0 Breach. Agent Salinas stood there, leaning against the table, a cup of hot coffee in her hand. You're here, she said, her tone calm, her eyes sharp as a blade. I nodded. I couldn't let anyone else design this. She smiled. That's exactly why we chose you. The first meeting of the Zero Breach Division started at 9 sharp. 9 people, just enough for a team. Each one is an expert from a different agency: NASA, Lockheed, Google Defense Division, and one from DARPA, the same colonel who had signed the contract Meridian lost. They all looked at me with the same mix of curiosity and respect, as if they'd already heard the story whispered through the corridors. She's the one who got fired for asking for a promotion, and then cost them $50 million. No one said it out loud, but their eyes did. I opened the first slide, not technical data, not diagrams, not encryption flowcharts, just one line in bold white letters. Power isn't about control, it's about clarity. I spoke slowly, each word cutting through the air. We're not here to control people. We're here to make sure no one can use power to hide their mistakes. I've worked in a place where compliance was used as a weapon. I won't let that happen again. There was no applause, just silence. Thick, heavy, breathing with me. A man across the table, hair gray, voice raspy, spoke softly. That's the shortest and best speech I've heard in 30 years of security work. I smiled. Sometimes less is enough. I left the room at noon. Outside, the sun was bright. The dry, cool kind of sunlight DC is known for. Nothing like Seattle's gray rain. I sat on a bench outside the building, took off my glasses, and inhaled deeply. A strange feeling settled in. Not pride, not satisfaction. Peace. I didn't have to prove anything anymore. Not to Brian, not to Melissa, not to anyone. What I needed to prove to myself was that silence, when used right, can be louder than a scream. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten, ink on paper. The sender, Joel. Naomi, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to thank you for not retaliating. I lost my job, my reputation, but at least I finally understand. Loyalty to the wrong person is a form of betrayal of yourself. Wishing you peace. Folded the letter and placed it in a small wooden box with other fragments of the past. My old ID badge, the backup USB, the pen I used to sign the grievance that was never reviewed. Now, I looked at them without bitterness. They weren't scars. They were proof that I'd walked through the storm and didn't get carried away by the wind. That evening, as I packed up to leave the office, Salinas passed by. If you could go back to your first day at Meridian, would you still ask for that promotion? She asked. I smiled. Of course. But this time I'd write my own name on the title plate. She laughed. I think you already did, West. I stepped outside and looked down Pennsylvania Avenue, where the city lights burned bright. This city didn't know my name, and it didn't have to. But somewhere, buried in thousands of reports and millions of lines of code, was a trace I left behind. A woman once fired for daring to ask for recognition. And instead of stepping back, she built a system that made others ask permission to exist. There's a saying I once heard: justice doesn't always come on time, but it always comes to the right person. Now I understand. It doesn't come to the one who shouts the loudest. It comes to the one who stands still and waits for the storm to pass. And when the sky finally clears, you realize you never needed revenge. Your existence is proof they were wrong.